Today we're continuing our series where we test unusual ways to dye leather, and we plan to cover some popular techniques, but during my research I thought, what if I try to create a brand new technique? So I conducted several experiments and came up with a method that I'll show you today. I call it inverse dyeing, and I think I've invented this technique, but there's no way to know for sure. If you've done this before, let me know in the comments. The idea behind this technique is that you first dye the leather with a waterproof base layer, and then dye over that before wiping the entire piece with deglazer. The deglazer removes the top coat and exposes the natural leather color underneath. And this creates a unique effect because the negative space becomes what is dyed, while the design is left natural. It's easier to show you than it is to explain it, so let's get started. And the first one I'm gonna try is to use this rope, which I've just used almost like a paintbrush, and I've been getting cool swirls out of it. And I've got my deglazer ready and a paper towel to wipe it off. Let's jump into it. I just cut off the end of the rope. Now I'm just spreading it out to make something resembling a paintbrush. Make sure you don't have too much on there. And we just go for it. Do some with the small one now. Okay. And the leather sheen does make it a little darker so you can see where you've done it. So I'll give this just a couple minutes to dry, then we'll go over it with the dye. Okay, so the leather sheen has dried, and just before I put any dye on it, I'm gonna take the deglazer, open that up, and have some on the paper towel so it's ready to go after I've applied the dye. And then I've got just a dry paper towel off to the side to do a final wipe down after the deglazer. Then you can already see some of that veg tan poking through because it can't penetrate the leather sheen, which is water resistant. Alright, then we'll quickly wipe it down with our deglazer. Try to remove as much of that dye from the top as we can. And if you aren't familiar with what deglazer is, it's just a product that's designed to remove the finish of leather, which is what we're using, the leather sheen in this case. And it removes that from leather and strips away some of the dye as well that was sitting on top of that finish. And as you see, depending on where more of the leather sheen was applied, that's where you see straight through to the veg tan. And if it was a more thin layer, it just let a little bit of the dye through, so that's where you see the lighter parts. The sky's the limit. You can be really creative with how much you put on there, depending on the look you're going for. But I like that we can see some really light parts and some parts that are a lighter blue. I think it looks pretty interesting. So we'll let that dry. It should lighten up a little bit and hit it with some finish. For this one, I'm going to use this little foam rake that I made, and I just took some scissors and cut out some portions of it so that as we rake it across, some places get dye and some places don't. Corbin from the future here. Forgot to mention earlier that I'm using Leather Colors dye for this, which is a water-based dye. In my testing, I found that alcohol and oil-based dyes don't work nearly as well for this technique, so make sure you're using water-based dyes. I'll give that a quick pat down because I don't want any standing leather sheen. Then we'll come back to this in a couple minutes once it's dried. And I try to apply the dye as quickly as possible because I can't really prove it, but it just seems like the longer the dye sits on there, the more time it has to fight through that leather sheen barrier. Right. Load up some deglazer and see what we're left with. Reveal our bacon. So I'll do one more pass with the deglazer. Get as much of that red off that we can. As you can see, it doesn't take off a ton of the dye. It's just getting the stuff on top of the leather sheen, and so we've gotten most of it off already. All right, I think that's as much as we can pull off. The contrast will get even brighter as it dries, and this light part should lighten up even more. So we'll set this off to dry and try the next technique. So we'll keep on going to the next one. This time I'm going to use some batting material, which is used in upholstery, and it's very porous. So I'm thinking when I set it on the leather, only some places will touch and maybe it'll look like a stone or something like that. So let's give it a shot and see what we can come up with. I'll just very gently set it down. Random angles. Pat, pat, pat. I'll wipe off, pat down these droplets. All right, and that's looking pretty cool. I'm optimistic for this one. All right, so for this one, I think I can maybe go for like a meteorite or the surface of the moon type look. So I'm gonna be using the black dye, and we'll see if we can pull that off. Ooh, okay. I think this is off to a promising start. All right, and there you have it. The video team was doubting this one, but I think it looks cool. And I think it kind of has that meteorite, lunar surface sort of look. I think this is a good one for the black. So we'll let that dry and see if that stays black or turns into a gray. I'll be interested to see how that looks. But if you look in really closely, right now at least, you can kind of see how it fades from the black to the darkest parts. And then there's like a thin rim of gray before it goes to the white veg tan parts. And so when you look closely, I think it only gets better. And that sort of effect is something that I think would be near impossible to do with traditional dyeing methods. But with this inverted dyeing, you're able to get cool stuff like that. I really like this. I'm pleasantly surprised. See if we can keep this hot streak going.
Corbin, why do you keep throwing the leather?
Depending on what angle you throw it at in the spinning rotation, it can actually make it dry more even. And so that's what I recommend to dry your leather. Not really, that was a joke. Don't throw your stuff. Now we're gonna move on to the tinfoil method. And this is simply just a crumpled up ball of tinfoil that I have formed to the shape of my hand to make a highly specialized custom tool. And I'll dab that in the leather sheen, put it onto the leather, and we'll transfer some of these nooks and crannies from the tinfoil onto the leather piece. Guess here goes nothing. So far, this has kind of a similar look to the batting, but maybe with smaller droplets. So do you think we should give it any more pitter patters? Okay, take that as a yes. More is better, right? All right, take off the excess. Let it dry. Here's what it looks like before we put any of the dye on it. It seems like we'll get a similar effect to the last one, but maybe smaller negative spaces. I'll be interested to see how it reacts to the dye compared to that one.
This one looks like a flour tortilla.
Actually, let's do a combo. See what it looks like. Seems like these blended surprisingly well. Pretty cool. So we got a blue to a green sort of gradient. And it does look pretty similar to the batting, but these dots are a little bit smaller, and I also felt like I had a bit more control when using the foil. So we'll let them dry and get the finish on it and choose our favorite at that point. And here are some samples that I had pre-dyed ahead of time, and I've given them some time to dry. These two, I did the swirl method with the rope, and this one was the batting, I think. so I just used them with dye instead of with the leather sheen. And then this one I just dyed green, and this one I did kind of a rainbow with 3 colors. And so we'll do the same technique over that, and so that the base layer can show through. So let's see if that works and if we can get some cool two-tone looks. Give that a moment to dry and just keep on going with the rest of them. I'm changing up my angle slightly this time too. See if that looks any better than all vertical lines. That should be good. And then finally for this one, maybe I can do something with the brush, but instead of circles, maybe I'll do a wave or some other shape. And usually leather crafting is all about precision. So this feels very unnatural just to throw stuff together and see what happens, but who knows, maybe we'll get a cool effect and be able to kind of, I don't know, have some more creative projects because the leather we're using might be something that we've never used before, or something different to what our usual preferences would be. So here's all 8 of the samples. I'm gonna let these dry and then hit it with some finish. And I'm gonna do the same method I did on the last video where we spray dyed, which by the way, if you haven't watched that, go check it out. But the way that I came up with was to use Phoebing's 4-way care to kind of restore some of the moisture into the leather. And then my tried and true leather balm, I'll do that on the top to get some nice shine. All right, so these have all had the chance to dry and I put the leather balm on them to give them a little bit of shine and enhance the color. So let's take a closer look at these now that they're all prettied up. This one reminds me of the alien language from the movie Arrival. Maybe we could drop a picture of that right here if we don't get in trouble for copyright stuff. So there's that. Then this one here is the one that we were calling kind of the meteor look or the moon look. And this remains one of my favorites. I definitely have a watch strap in mind for this one, and it shined up nicely with the Oreo colorway. This is the one with the 3 colors with the black on top. And as it dried, a little bit more of this blue started to show through. I was worried it'd be too dark in this area, but some of it's peeking through if you look closely. And it all blended together really well. So I'm pleased with this one too. At a bigger scale, this is a really cool concept, I think. Here we've got the 2-tone look with the green and the blue, and I used the batting to get this spackled effect, and the transition in between the blue and the green is pretty nice and smooth. No harsh lines anywhere, so I'm a fan of that. And here is the one where we did 2 layers of swirls. Kind of looks like the state of Florida if you're squinting, with the red, white, and blue colors. The circles are, I think, my favorite application method with that rope. So I'm really happy with the way this one turned out. Here we've got what we were calling our bacon piece. I like the streaks, and I've got a watch strap in mind for this, and since it's one of the larger panels, I can probably get a wallet or a card holder out of it as well. And here we go with the watermelon. I like the black and the green. I was a little skeptical at first, but now that everything's finished up and shined up, I think this one looks nice. And then finally, we've got the green and the blue, where I did 2 layers of the batting application method. And this is also one of my favorites. Wish I had more of it. So I'm gonna make a few projects out of these, and we'll wrap this video up, and I'll give you some of my conclusions for this technique. This one we were calling the bacon watch strap because of the colors we chose, but I think it looks really nice, especially since it coordinates with the red second hand on the watch. So this one I did with what we called the meteor look. And then a couple card holders right here. This one was with the circle method. I used that rope to get the unique effect on it. And then this is the one that we did where I overdyed everything with black to darken it up. Here I used that foam rake to make these different streaks on the leather in red and blue. I really love the way the blue turned out. And then I've made 3 wallets with different designs here. This was the batting, another one with the swirl, and another one with the rake. Another keychain with the same leather as the watch. And then this one was one where I did a kind of gradient or 2-tone look. So I like the way that I was able to incorporate the transition of the color of the dye into the design of the final product. I've really enjoyed making this stuff, and I hope it inspires you to try something like this for yourself. And if you do want to do it and you need some of these products, of course we'll have everything linked in the description below. And if you enjoyed watching me attempt to invent a new dyeing method, go ahead and leave a like and a subscribe on the video so you can stay updated on all the new methods we're going to be trying out. That's all I've got for today. See you in the next one. And we love to see all the creative ideas you come up with, so if you try this for yourself, make sure to share that with us on socials.